Hello again, macro students. Here we are with Module 64 on aggregate supply. So last module we talked about aggregate demand, and now we're going to talk about aggregate supply. And then in our next module, we're going to put it all together. So what we're creating here is the aggregate demand, aggregate supply model. And this is one of the biggest, most foundational models that macroeconomics has. A lot of what we talk about in macroeconomics is based on this model that we're building right now. All right, so our question that we're trying to answer here is, what is aggregate supply and what can change it? What is the difference between aggregate supply in the short run and in the long run? So we actually have two aggregate supply curves, the short run aggregate supply curve and the long run aggregate supply curve. Now, short run, I can't give you an actual time for it, I can't say it's X amount of months, but we can kind of fudge with that a little bit. And you can think of short run as less than a year and long run as more than a year, if that kind of helps you. But short run just means soonish, long run means later. Okay, so our short run aggregate supply curve. Oh, by the way, for this module, I have, your notes are all pretty much filled in for you because of reasons. So having a highlighter would be really helpful for these, or at least two different colored pens, and I just threw mine on the floor. All right, here we go. So we draw our axes, and just like I said, this is going to be put together with aggregate demand. So we label our axes the same, price level and quantity, Q for quantity or real GDP or output, all the same thing. And then our short run aggregate supply curve is upward sloping, which is very nice because it looks just like the regular supply curve. And yes, you have to put all four letters on it, SRAS, short run aggregate supply, because by the end of this module, we are going to add in the LRAS, long run aggregate supply. So we got to label them correctly. And the short run aggregate supply curve shows the relationship between the price level and the quantity of real GDP or output that firms are willing and able to sell. Let's add there /supply. Okay, and if we look at this line, it tells us a story. It has some information for us. Now, if we were to draw in one price level, and then move it up to a second price level, well, then we can know from this graph if the price level increases, what will happen to the quantity supplied of real GDP? Well, we can see that it would go from here to there, which is an increase. So this graph is showing us that an increase in price level will cause an increase in the quantity supplied of real GDP or output in the short run. That's what this graph is showing us. So it's saying that if price level goes up, quantity supplied of real GDP goes up. If price level goes down, quantity supplied of real GDP goes down in the short run. Now, quantity supplied of real GDP going up or down, that is another way of saying businesses will supply more stuff. Maybe we want to add that in. So quantity supplied of real GDP increasing equals businesses will supply more stuff. Okay. So that's just, a way to put it into more clear terms that we understand. All right, let's go to page 2. All right. So page 2, we have, why is the short run aggregate supply curve upward sloping? So we just got done talking about the fact that the short run aggregate supply is upward sloping. And when we read that upward sloping line, it means that if price level goes up, quantity supplied of real GDP will also go up. So that's the what, but now here's the why. Why is that true? And let's just practice drawing our short run aggregate supply curve. So it's upward sloping. It gets labeled SRAS. Our x-axis is price level. Our, whoops, I said that wrong. Our y-axis is price level, and our x-axis is real GDP. You could also label that Q for quantity or output. Okay, so here we go. So here's our y. If the price level goes up, and remember that means inflation, right? If inflation happens, if the price of everything in general becomes more expensive, what does that mean? Well, it means that firms are selling goods and services at a higher price, right? So remember, with supply, we're thinking from a business's point of view. With demand, we're thinking from a buyer's point of view, which is way easier because we're all buyers, right? But with supply, we got to shift our thinking to the business's point of view. So the price levels are going up. That means that the firms are willing to sell, or they're able to sell their stuff at a higher price. And that means that the firm's profits go up, right? If they can sell their stuff at a higher price, then they will be making more money. Well, when businesses can make more money, they are willing to produce more stuff. And that means that then the quantity supplied of real GDP goes up. So kind of this, as a summary, is when price level goes up, they make more money, so they make more stuff. Because if it's easy for them to make more money, then they're gonna like go out there and just do it, just like make more money or make more stuff in order to make more money. Now, if this is very confusing to you because it's hard to think from the point of view of a business, that's okay. This doesn't come as naturally to me either because I'm not a business owner either. So if you simply remember that the short run aggregate supply curve is upward sloping, and if you can read that graph and understand that it means that if the price level goes up, the quantity demand or supplied of real GDP will also go up, you're good. All right. So we said here that the firm's profits will go up. So now we're going to talk more about why that is. Why can firms' profits go up? Because when I was saying that, I was thinking, well, how would their profits go up? Because all of their inputs that they have to buy to like create whatever it is they're selling, those prices are going to go up too. So how are their profits going to go up? Well, the answer is sticky wages. Yes, this is a term you need to know and understand. Well, sticky wages. So wages can take longer to change than prices do. So firms can experience an increase in profits for a very short time. So what that means is the inflation is happening like all over the place. A firm will increase their prices because inflation's happening, so they're going to do that. And for a short period of time, they are going to pay their workers the exact same as they were before, even though they increase the prices on their whatever it is they're selling, their good or service. Which means that they get to increase the price on their good and service, but they still get to pay their workers that old price for at least a short amount of time. Which means that their profits can go up because wages take longer to change than prices do. So it takes a while for all of those employees to start being like, I see you increased the price of your product. I see you're making more money. I see inflation's happening all around me and everything is costing me more money. I need a raise. We need a raise. That whole process of negotiating those raises between the workers and the bosses takes a while. So for a short period of time, those profits for those owners get to go up, which creates our upward sloping short run aggregate supply curve. Okay, page 3. Shifts of the aggregate supply curve. So you knew this was coming, right? We shifted the aggregate demand curve, and now we're going to shift the aggregate supply curve. Now remember, a decrease is a leftward shift, and an increase is always a rightward shift. A lot of people get themselves in trouble because they don't think left and right. When it comes to supplies, some people start thinking up and down, and then you get yourself all mixed up. So left and right. Okay, so with our short run aggregate supply curve, you can see that they started here with short run aggregate supply curve 1, and they shifted it to the left. And then here, they started here, and then it's supposed to be an increase, so they shifted it to the right for their short run aggregate supply curve 2. And a decrease means that at every price level, firms will supply less stuff. So if you just picked one price level, you would see that the quantity supplied of real GDP decreased here with the leftward shift. And then you would see that over here with the rightward shift, it would increase. So a decrease means that no matter what the price is doing, like whatever that price level is, even if it doesn't change, they're going to supply less stuff. Here, at a price level, they're going to supply more stuff. So what would cause that? What causes that? 3 reasons. Number 1 is a change in commodity price products. Commodity prices. Now, a commodity, that's probably a new word for you. That's kind of like an important product. Like a commodity is just like sort of a big product that's sold everywhere. It's really important to the entire economy. A lot of food products are commodities. But our biggest example of commodity is oil. So if the change in the price of inputs for a company changes. So remember, inputs, that is stuff used to make stuff. Okay, so for example, we often use the example like wood is an input for pencils, right? In order to make those pencils, they have to buy the wood for it. So our biggest example here is oil, because oil is used in the production of so much stuff. It's used to transport our goods around. So it's a really big example. And so if inputs become more expensive, if oil becomes more expensive, that means the firm's profits go down. Well, that means, so if it becomes more expensive, they have to spend more money. They, meaning businesses, have to spend more money, and that means they get to keep less money. So, for example, if the price of the oil increases, then the firms have to spend more money just to create their product, and assuming that they're selling it at the same price, their profits are going to go down. And if profits go down, short run aggregate supply curve goes down. And here, this is just a really scribbly drawing of what the short run aggregate supply curve decreasing looks like. Now here's our opposite. If inputs become less expensive, like if the price of oil goes down, firms' profits go up, short run aggregate supply curve goes up. So if there's a product and it's saying, if there's a question and it's talking about if it's talking about the car industry, and if it's saying that the price of steel has gone way up, well, steel is used to make cars. So that would be this. If the price of steel goes up, the car industry is going to make less money, and therefore the short run aggregate supply curve will decrease. All right, let's go to page 4. All right, so page 4. So number 2, remember what we're talking about here is reasons why the short run aggregate supply curve will shift. Changes in nominal wages is one of them. We're going to cross that one out. We're going to ignore it. We're not going to think about it or get tested on it. And then number 3, changes in productivity. So it says that an increase in productivity means that workers can make more doing or using the same amount of resources. To be more productive means that, so the word productive comes from produce. To be more productive means that you can produce more, do more, given the same amount of resources. That could be time, or that could be like material resources. And if workers can do more stuff, then the profits for that business go up. And just like before, if profits go up, short-run aggregate supply goes up. Now look, when I was writing this, I accidentally drew the wrong curve, so we scribbled it out. There's the right one. It's often caused by technology. So there might be a test question that would say something like, if new technology came out that allowed workers to do 2 times as much work in the same time, how would that influence the short-run aggregate supply curve? Well, that would increase it. Here we have decrease in productivity. Workers cannot make or produce as much stuff as they could before. That means profits go down and short-run aggregate supply curve goes down. And this is often caused by government rules and regulations, meaning that government rules and regulations are often made in the terms of safety, health, and fairness. Those are all important things, right? So the government might make a rule that says, hey, restaurants need to have all employees wash their hands after they touch money. Well, isn't that going to decrease the productivity of those workers if they have to pause and wash their hands all the time, right? It is going to slow down their productivity. I'm not saying it's a bad law. I think it's a good one, but you can see it will slow down their productivity in the name of or for safety, health, and or fairness. Okay. All right, so those were the 3 reasons, which we only need to know 2, of what can cause the short-run aggregate supply curve to shift left or right to increase or decrease. Well, now let's talk about this long-run aggregate supply curve. Now, when does the short run end and the long run begin? Well, I mean, I told you at the beginning of this lecture, you can think of it like before a year and after a year, but the actual answer is when wages adjust to changes in the price level, when wages like catch up with inflation, when the workers and their bosses kind of come to those agreements, when the workers can go through that process of saying, you're selling your products for more, there's inflation, I deserve more wages. And when that whole process goes up, then the long-run aggregate supply curve is actually just a vertical line. It's a vertical line. And what that vertical line tells us is that if price level were to go up, the quantity supplied of real GDP stays the same. If the price level was to go down, quantity supplied of real GDP stayed the same. In the long run, price level does not impact real GDP. It impacts it for a little while, for a little bit. But then in the long run, it's not about the price level. That's not what will be that's not what will impact that long run aggregate supply curve. Let's go to page 6, our last page. Now, the long run aggregate supply curve, it actually shows a country's potential. It shows that what our economy will be at if the country is producing if the country is producing as much as possible by using all of their resources. Well, doesn't that sound familiar? We talked about that in Unit 1 in the PPF. The PPF showed a country's potential, right? We said that if an economy is at a point on the PPF, they are at maximum efficiency. They are at full potential. They are utilizing all of their resources. They have low unemployment. All resources are being used. Well, same with the long-run aggregate supply curve. If the economy is at a point on the long-run aggregate supply curve, it is just like being on the PPF. They are very similar. Both of them can also show economic growth, meaning that if we draw an outward shift in our PPF, that is showing economic growth. And also, this might be kind of hard to notice, but here's our LRAS 1, and then it shifted to the right to our LRAS 2. That shows economic growth. Now remember, economic growth means that the economy can produce more goods and services. And maybe that's because they found more natural resources. Maybe that's because there's more labor. Maybe that's because they increased their physical capital. Maybe that's because they increased their human capital with training and education. So maybe that's because of new technology, increased productivity, that economic growth, which is, we love economic growth. Let's give that one a happy face because that's a good thing. All right, everybody, that's it. We did Module 64 in just one video. And so don't forget to do your summary, do those practice problems, and I'll see you at our class. Bye.